Well, as you can see, we're not in the studio today. We're in one of my favorite places, backcountry British Columbia. I'm on my snowmobile and I just came out for a quick rip. Well, I want to share an experience that I had early on in my career when I had an incredible opportunity. I'm talking within the first year and a half of me starting as an assistant engineer at a local studio in Vancouver. Well, a very prominent English producer was rolling into town to do an album for a couple of months. And they were locking the studio out, and the chief engineer of the studio at the time, the kind of head engineer at that place, was assigned to the project because the studio I'm talking about was very unique. It was a special kind of studio that you sort of needed a local person to figure out. So my mentor and the guy that literally got me the gig at the studio, he suddenly had to leave for some reason. I forget what it was, but I think it was over the Christmas holidays. He had to leave for just over 2 weeks for an unexpected emergency. So I couldn't believe it, but I got the call to fill in for that just over 2 week period that the main engineer was going to be away. So, oh man, I got so excited. I shared this news with everybody I knew. I couldn't wait. You know, this was a major opportunity. So can you imagine how excited I was when I showed up at work the first day and had what I thought was a great day with this producer and the band working in the studio, and came back in the next day and had what I thought was another equally good day in the studio. And oh man, I thought things were going so well. I even connected with some of my really good friends, and I was like, man, this is really happening. I can't believe this is happening to me. And I go into the studio on my third day on that session, and there wasn't anyone around. There was no cars in the driveway. I rode my bicycle in. You know, I walk in the studio and there's this kind of, I just immediately feel a weird vibe, right? Well, the studio manager says, Ken, come on into my office for a second. And I'm like, oh man, my face literally goes red. Do you know that feeling? She proceeds to sit down, and in the most wonderful way, she tells me that I've been let go on this project, that the producer cannot handle the energy level that I have in the studio. It's just sort of too over the top for this particular producer. Oh man, well, so you can imagine how I took that at that time in my career. You know, very little experience, right? The skin was pretty thin. It hadn't built up a very thick skin yet. Well, the studio manager that sat me down that day and gave me that news, she did something incredibly important. She realized that, you know, I was a young engineer, brand new into this thing, and oh man, that was devastating, right? She realized that she had just basically served me a couple of uppercuts, right? Maybe one to the ribs, and I was like, oh, really, really, really hurt by it. But she didn't let me leave the office that day before letting me know something very, very important. That's the whole point of why I'm out in the woods talking about this today. She made it very clear to me that the very reason that one producer in 1,000 producers was not excited about working with me was the very reason that all of the other producers that I had had the opportunity to work with wanted to work with me. That was exactly why. You know, having no personal relationship skills at that point really in my life, and it being so early in my career, yeah, that was a devastating hit. I'll never forget it. I remember, you know, going to work on that third day expecting to spend a 12-hour day again working in the studio, and there I was riding my bike home an hour later, like 11 a.m., and I rode back to my place, and I remember I was in this little basement suite. I just felt terrible. But what that studio manager told me that day was so critically important. She made it okay for me to be me, okay? That wonderful studio manager called me the very next day and reminded me how important it was for me not to take this personally and to not change who I was, because who I was exactly why they hired me. It's not the only project I've been fired from over my career, but that was the first time, and it was the one that was really devastating. I remember it. But because of what that studio manager told me, she made it very clear to me that it was okay to be excited. It's okay to be enthusiastic. And if that's who you are, then go with it. The message that she passed to me is a great message that I just want to pass on. You know, that's a wonderful bit of advice. Don't be anybody but yourself. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this little field trip. I better get back to the cabin while there's still light. Let's spin the camera around here for a sec.